Hey everyone, this is Mike from Firefighter Now. I wanted to shoot a quick video for you going over basic test taking strategies, things that you can include in your prep right now, things that you could start working on, and things that you can remember in your next tests that you take. Some of it might be basic, some of it might be review for some of you, but some of you might learn something. So first thing you need to know is before the test is what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to call the department that you're going to be testing for, and you're going to want to find out a whole bunch of different things. First, you're going to want to find out what type of test they're going to be offering. There's so many different testing companies out there and so many different actual tests that you can end up taking. You could take an IO solutions test or a Wonderlic test or a fire team test, or there's a whole host of other tests that you can end up taking. You're going to want to find out what you're getting yourself into. That way you can kind of research ahead of time and find out, okay, what do other people say about this test? What type of questions typically are on this test? You're also going to want to ask them what type of subjects are covered. Now, generally, on most of these civil service or written fire exams, you're going to be covering the same types of material, different questions, but the same types of questions on all of them. Now, some of them might vary slightly. Some of them might have video sections on them. Some of them might not. Some of them might be more situationally based. Some of them might be more general knowledge based, but generally you're going to cover all the same types of things. You're going to want to ask questions like how many questions are going to be on this test. This is good for you to know going into it, to know how much time you have. And like the next point on there says, how much time do you have to take the test? Now, most of the tests that I took were about 100 questions, and they give you about 2 hours to complete the test. But some might be different. You never know, so it's important for you to call the department and find out. It's also very important to call and find out if they have a study guide available. A lot of cities and a lot of departments, especially the bigger cities, they'll have a study guide that will give you an idea of what type of questions are going to be on there and what types of things you can practice and learn and prepare for your upcoming tests. Next, don't cram for these tests. If you think that you're going to sit down the night before and study a whole bunch and a whole bunch of different math problems and reading problems and vocabulary words and things like that, it's probably not going to make that much of a difference for you. It's like anything else. The preparation should take a while, and to prepare properly, it will take a while. So don't think you're going to get a whole lot out of it if you just cram the night before. Second, and this kind of goes without saying, and this is really a reflection of how serious you are about getting this job, is get some sleep the night before. I remember when I was testing, some of the guys would go out drinking and they'd be hungover the next day, and they didn't really take it that seriously. And I understand, maybe you work night shift or something like that, and if that's the case, you're going to have to work with that, and that makes it more difficult. But you got to do what you got to do. But if you have the opportunity, get some rest, eat properly, get some sleep before you take the test. Third, dress professionally. Now, I remember when I was testing, there would be hundreds of people that would show up for one test. But every once in a while at some of these tests, officers or the chief or people from the Civil Service Commission would be at the test. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to remember you 6 months later when it comes to hiring, but they might. You never know. So one of the lessons that I learned when I was going through with all these other departments is you never know who's watching. And the last thing you want to do is make a statement by maybe kind of showing up looking like a slob or something like that. Now, it doesn't mean you have to dress in a three-piece suit or a skirt or anything like that, but look presentable. Don't show up and look like you just rolled out of bed. Number four, show up early. If you're late, there's a good chance you might not get in. Every test I took, there were always those people that showed up 5 or 10 minutes late, and the test takers, or the test administrators, I should say, just simply told them, I'm sorry, you can't get in. You have to be here on time, or you don't get to take the test. And they missed out on the opportunity for that department. And finally, don't forget your ID. This is how they will register you, and this is how they will know you are who you are instead of somebody else coming in and take the test for you. There were always those people too that forgot to bring their ID and they weren't allowed to take the test. So make sure you bring that with you. Also, before the test, let's go over some basic common test subjects that you'll probably run into. And again, all tests are a little bit different. All tests have a little bit different questions, but they generally cover these subjects. There will be some sort of math, and that could be all sorts of things from fractions and decimals to proportions to word problems. It could be a whole host of different things. Now, it's not necessarily difficult math. It's math that if you don't understand it very well or you haven't gone over it in a while, it can be difficult. Mechanical reasoning, that's almost on every test out there. Mechanical reasoning is typically things like pulleys and levers and gears and things like that. Just basic mechanical reasoning stuff. Now, those two subjects tend to give people the most problem. I know that those were the two most difficult for me, but you will almost always see those two on every test in some form. Maps and directions, these are also very popular. Two different types of maps. You might see street maps where they will have maybe a screenshot of a Google map, or maybe there will be its own hand-drawn map, and you'll have to figure out how to get from point A to point B with these streets being closed or traffic going this way. But another type of map or directional orientation kind of thing they might give you is they might give you a blueprint of a building and say, you're in this area of the building and you have to get to that area, but these doors are closed and this hallway is closed off. How would you get there? So you need to be able to get yourself around, whether it be on a street map or a blueprint or something like that. Reading comprehension. This is also almost on every single test. The reading comprehension, what they'll do is they'll give you a little paragraph or a short story and then 4 or 5 questions that go along with that. And what the questions will want to know, if you're able to read that, understand the material, and answer questions accordingly. Vocabulary, this was also pretty popular. I saw this on a lot of my tests, and it wasn't necessarily questions that said, how do you spell this particular word? It was more, what's the correct spelling of these 4 words? And they would give you 4 words that were the same, but just spelled differently, and you would have to pick out the correct way to spell it. Now that was difficult. Some of those were very hard, so make sure you go over some of your vocabulary words as well. And while we're talking about test subjects, usually all of these tests will be multiple choice if you've never taken one of these before. The good thing about that is that gives you a 25% chance of getting it right, even if you have no clue what the answer is. So know that going into it. Other things you might come across on these tests are video-based things, judgment or situational reasoning kind of questions and human relations questions. Now these kind of go hand in hand. And these are kind of awkward too, because you'll sit in a room by yourself in front of a computer screen and they'll show you a scenario and they'll pause the video and you have 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 30 seconds to answer and explain how you would act. And those are a little weird, but they might give you a situation like you're out at the store shopping and an irate citizen comes up and starts yelling at you or doing something like that, and then they'll pause the video and expect you to act a certain way, and they score you based off of how you respond and what you say. You might also get fire or EMS related questions. I know one of the tests that I took, this particular department was only hiring people that were paramedics. That was a requirement for the job. And when I went into the test, I was totally expecting it to be your typical math and mechanical, typical civil service test, but it was 100 paramedic level questions. Paramedic level questions about heart tones and lung sounds, and you show up on a scene of a 57-year-old female having these symptoms, how do you respond? And it was difficult, and I definitely wasn't expecting it. And that's, again, that goes back to the importance of calling the department ahead of time and finding out what kind of test is this, what kind of subjects are going to be on there. Now, not everybody's going to be open to telling you that, but it doesn't hurt to try. Now, during the test, it's important that when you're taking it, you look over it very quickly. As soon as you get the test laid out in front of you, look through it real quick. Take a minute to see what you're going to be coming up against here in the next hour or two, and start with your strengths. That means complete all the sections that are easiest for you first. So this is for 2 reasons. Let's say you're really, really good at math. The first section you're going to want to turn to is the math section. You're going to want to knock out all those questions right away. That's good for 2 reasons. 1, it keeps your confidence high. And 2, it ensures you'll get all the easy questions right. Now, easy is a relative term. For some people, mechanical things might be easy, where others it might be difficult. But there's nothing worse than opening a test where you look at the first question and you just think, oh my God, I don't know how to answer this. This is a crazy math question. I struggle with math. And you try and battle your way through that. It kills your confidence and it kills your kind of flow going into it. So keep your confidence high and get as many of the easy questions done out of the way. Also, a big key to success in these tests is eliminating the easy mistakes or the stupid mistakes. So as you can see in the little picture on the right, a lot of these tests will be Scantron. And when you have a Scantron test, make sure you fill in the slot or the circle or the bubble. Make sure you fill it in completely, like the 2 on the far left. Don't put an X over it. Don't put a circle around it. Don't scribble through it. And this might seem very obvious to a lot of people, but people miss questions like that all the time. And it could be one question that can make the difference between you passing or failing. Also, going along with filling it in, make sure you test your erasers before you start the test. A lot of these testing companies will give you pencils that you can use, and sometimes these erasers are pretty crappy. So make sure you test them on a scrap piece of paper before you start taking the test, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to fill in a question, realize it was wrong, and erase it, and then the eraser mark is so bad it ends up smudging 2 other questions too, because then that might count against you. Also, another easy, stupid mistake that people make all the time, and I know I did it and it was so frustrating, is use another piece of paper to cover your answers so you don't lose your place. So let's say you're working on number 3 on the test, but you're filling in your answer sheet and you're filling number 2. Well, by the time you get to number 99 and you realize you're on question 100, but you're filling in number 99, now you've got to go back and figure out where you missed a question. And that could waste a lot of time, and that can, in a lot of cases, can cost you the test. Easy fix: take your test, cover your Scantron sheet, and as you go, cover up the answers that you've already done. Finally, and this got me all the time, and this gets people all the time, read the entire question and all of the answers. It's so simple and it sounds so dumb, but everybody does this. Everybody will read a question that they'll be familiar with and think, oh, I already know. But you don't know. Finish reading the question and read all the answers, because it's the simple mistakes like that that add up that will cost you the test. Also, during the test, and especially in the math section, be familiar with your conversions. Know how to go from inches to feet to yards to miles, or millimeters to centimeters and meters to kilometers. Now, you don't have to know all of them and every denomination between that, but at least be familiar with it. Most of these tests will give you an idea, or they'll tell you what the conversion is, but in case they don't, some of the tests I took did not tell me that. So it's important to know, make sure you go over that, especially because you will be coming across that in some of your math problems. Finally, answer all of the questions. Unfortunately, there's people out there that'll say, if you don't know, just leave it blank. It's better to get all the ones right. Don't do that. Make sure you answer every question. It's in your best interest, especially on multiple choice questions, to answer every single question there, because no matter what, you already have a 25% chance of getting it right. Now, you'll also have people out there that will unfortunately give the terrible advice that if you don't know, just pick C, because statistically it's the most common answer. And that's terrible advice. What you want to do is you want to make an educated guess and compare the answers to one another. So let's go with a simple example. If the question, let's say it's a basic math question, and it's 2 plus 2, right? And the answer is 4, obviously. But some of the other choices are 1, 3, and then 27. Well, 27 is obviously way wrong, so you can scratch that one off right away. Now your chances just went from 25% to 33%. So if you were really struggling with a question, don't just pick C and move on. Try and pick out the outlier that really makes no sense, that has nothing to do, and there's no way that that's possibly the answer, because now your chances went up, and now choose from there. So again, eliminate answers that are obviously wrong, then make an educated guess. After the test, what you're going to want to do is, as soon as you're done, go to your car and make sure before you get there you have a piece of paper or a notebook and a pen, and write down as many questions as you can remember from that test. Now, no, that's not cheating, and no, there's nothing wrong with that, but chances are you're going to be taking test after test after test after test, and eventually you're going to start seeing the same tests repeated. And eventually you're going to start seeing the same questions. Well, if after every test you take, you have a journal or a binder now of different questions that you've come across, that's going to set you up for success, because you're going to remember, I'm going to study these questions before this particular test. Also, make sure you go back and review the areas that you struggled with and start preparing for the next test. When you have this list of questions that you can remember, sit down on your computer when you get home and Google them. I know I did that with a couple of my questions that I thought I had the right answer, but I figured I'd write it down anyways. And when I got home, I realized on all these tests I was guessing the wrong answer for these. Go back and do it. I know there were guys that I work with who tested for years. They really struggled with the test, but by the time they were done, they had an entire binder, an entire journal full of different test questions from the different tests in the area. So I hope this little video helped. I hope it gave you some pointers and some tips to prepare. If there's anything else we can do, please feel free to visit us at firefighternow.com, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.